The stars looked different through the viewport of the new horizon. Captain Han Jiwoo stood with his hands behind his back, watching the distant nebula paint colors across the darkness. His ship had been exploring this sector for 3 months now, charting new systems and searching for signs of intelligent life. Today they found it. "Captain, we have incoming ships," Lieutenant Choi Doyen called from his station. His voice was steady, but Jiwoo heard the tension underneath. 5 vessels, unknown design. "They're big, sir. Much bigger than us." Jiwoo walked to the center of the bridge. Dr. Park Soo-min looked up from her console, her eyes wide with excitement and fear mixed together. She had spent her whole career waiting for this moment. First contact with an alien species, but something about the way those ships moved told Jiwoo this would not be a friendly meeting. "Open all frequencies," Jiwoo said. "Let's say hello." The main screen flickered to life. A face appeared that was nothing like human. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its elongated head. Its skin looked like polished metal, and when it spoke, the translator struggled to keep up with the harsh clicking sounds. "I am General Thelgzar of the Rex Empire," the alien said. Its voice came through cold and commanding. "You have entered territory claimed by the Empire. Your vessel will power down immediately. You will surrender yourselves for processing." Jiwoo felt his crew looking at him. Processing. That word carried weight that made his stomach tighten. "I am Captain Han Jiwoo of the Human Exploration, Vessel New Horizon. We come in peace. We did not know this space was claimed. We mean no harm." Thelgzar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace, harm, these words mean nothing. The Vrex Empire has conquered 847 star systems. We have defeated species far more advanced than you appear to be. You are primitives with 1 small ship. You have no choice but to obey." Dr. Park stepped forward. "General, please. We're scientists and explorers. We've been searching for intelligent life. This is a great moment for both our species. We can learn from each other." "Learn?" Thelgzar's 4 eyes focused on her with something like contempt. What could the Vrex possibly learn from creatures who barely crawl between stars? "No. You will surrender now, or we will take you by force. You have 1 of your minutes to decide." The screen went dark. Jiwoo looked around his bridge. 23 crew members. Scientists, engineers, explorers. None of them soldiers, though several had military training from Earth's old conflicts. His ship had defensive weapons, but they were designed to destroy asteroids and debris, not fight warships. "Captain," Engineer Kang Minho spoke from his station near the back. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from those ships. If they fire on us, our shields won't last 10 seconds. Can we run?" Jiwoo asked. "Not fast enough," Doyen replied. "They'll catch us before we can jump to faster than light speeds." Jiwoo closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about Earth, about the decades of peace humanity had built after almost destroying themselves. He thought about the principles that guided the exploration program. And he thought about his grandmother, who had survived the last great war on Earth and taught him that sometimes the only way to win was to change the rules of the game. "Soo-min," he said quietly. "How long did you scan them when they first appeared?" "About 30 seconds before they hailed us." "Why? Did you get anything useful?" The doctor's eyes widened as she understood what he was asking. Her fingers flew across her console. Yes, I got atmospheric composition from their ships, electromagnetic readings, even some biological data when they opened the channel." "Minho." Jiwoo turned to his engineer. "Do we still have the music box?" The engineer looked confused for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Your grandmother's music box?" "Yes, it's in your quarters." "Sir, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that General Thelgzar expects us to either surrender or fight. So we're going to do neither." Jiwoo tapped his communicator. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to activate Protocol Omega. Everyone to your stations. Do exactly as we practiced. No matter what happens, trust the plan." Protocol Omega had seemed like paranoid foolishness when Command made them practice it. A backup plan for if first contact went catastrophically wrong. Jiwoo had never imagined he would actually use it. "Soo-min, take your scans and get to work. I need to know everything about their biology in the next 40 minutes. Minho, bring me that music box and meet me in engineering. Doyen, when they come back online, you're going to tell them we're having trouble with our power systems. Buy me time." "How much time?" Doyen asked. "As much as you can." The minute passed. General Thelgzar appeared on screen again, looking even more hostile than before. "Your time is finished." "What is your answer, human?" Doyen stepped forward before Jiwoo could speak. General, we're experiencing technical difficulties with our power systems. The stress of your energy weapons has damaged our core. If we don't repair it, we'll lose life support. Please give us time to fix it. Then we'll discuss surrender terms. Thelzar studied him with those strange four eyes. You ask for mercy you have not earned. But very well. The Empire is not without honor. You have one of your hours to repair your vessel. After that, we board whether you are ready or not. The screen went dark again. Jiwoo let out a breath he did not know he was holding. Did he believe it? Minyo asked. Doesn't matter, Jiwoo replied. We have an hour. Let's use it. What followed was the most intense hour of Jiwoo's life. Dr. Park worked with her team to analyze every piece of data they had on Vrex biology. Engineer Minho modified environmental systems throughout the ship. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role. Jiwoo stood in his quarters, holding his grandmother's music box. It was small and simple, made of wood and metal. When wound up, it played an old Korean melody his grandmother had loved. She had carried it through the war, through the refugee camps, through everything. It reminded her, she always said, of what they were fighting to preserve. I hope you'd understand what I'm about to do with this, Jiwoo whispered to her memory. The hour passed too quickly and too slowly at the same time. When General Thelzar's face appeared again, Jiwoo was ready. Your time is finished. We are boarding now. Resistance will be met with immediate force. We understand, Jiwoo said calmly. We won't resist. But General, before you board, I want to show you something. Call it a gesture of good faith. Thelzar looked suspicious but curious. Show me. Jiwoo held up the music box to the camera. This is our most powerful weapon. I want you to see it before we meet face to face. For the first time, Thelzar looked genuinely surprised, but that surprise quickly turned to contempt. The general had no idea what was about to happen. None of them did. The game had changed, and the Vrex were playing by rules they did not understand. The boarding was about to begin. The airlocks hissed open with sounds like angry serpents. General Thelzar stepped onto the human ship with 12 of his best soldiers behind him. Their armor gleamed under the lights, and their weapons hummed with enough power to cut through steel. The Vrex general stood tall, his four eyes scanning everything with the confidence of someone who had conquered hundreds of worlds. The human ship was smaller than he expected inside. The corridors were narrow, the lighting was soft instead of harsh, and everything smelled strange. Organic. The Vrex preferred ships that felt like machines. This vessel felt almost alive. Commander Velthar walked beside Thelzar, his weapons raised and ready. The humans are all on their bridge, General. They have not moved or attempted to flee. Their weapons are powered down. Good, Thelzar replied. This will be quick. Another species learns their place in the Empire. They walked through the corridors without resistance. No ambushes, no tricks. The humans simply waited like prey that had accepted its fate. This made Thelzar even more contemptuous. Where was their spirit? Where was their fight? Even the weakest species usually tried something desperate. The bridge doors opened. Captain Han Jiwoo stood in the center of a circular room surrounded by his crew at various stations. None of them held weapons. None of them even looked particularly afraid. They just looked tired. General Thelzar, Jiwoo said with a small nod. Welcome aboard the New Horizon. Thelzar ignored the greeting. His eyes locked onto something sitting on a pedestal in the exact center of the bridge. A small box made of primitive materials, wood and metal, crafted by hand rather than manufactured. This was the weapon the human captain had shown him? You mock me, Thelzar said, his voice low and dangerous. You showed me this trinket and called it your most powerful weapon. Do you think the Vrex are fools? I think the Vrex are exactly what they appear to be, Jiwoo replied calmly. Powerful, advanced, absolutely certain of their superiority. And yet you show me this. Thelzar gestured at the music box with disgust. What is it supposed to be, a bomb? Some primitive explosive device? Dr. Park Suman spoke up from her station. It's a music box, General. It plays a melody when you wind it up. It's over 200 years old. It belonged to the captain's grandmother. Commander Velthar scanned the box with his equipment. General, I'm reading no energy signature. No explosive materials. No biological agents. No radiation. It's exactly what she said. Just a box that plays music. Thelzar felt his anger rising. Then why? Why waste our time with this object? Do you truly think I am so simple that I would be distracted by a toy? Jiwoo smiled, and something about that smile made Velthar tighten his grip on his weapon. It was not the smile of someone who had lost. It was the smile of someone who knew something you did not. You're looking at it wrong, General, Jiwoo said quietly. That's not the weapon. We are, Thelgzar started to laugh. Then he stopped. Something was wrong. Commander Velthar was swaying slightly. Two of the soldiers behind them stumbled. The general's own vision began to blur around the edges. What is this? Thelgzar demanded, but his words came out slurred. 47 minutes, Engineer Kang Minho said from his station, looking at his watch. That's exactly how long you spent studying the music box during our transmission, then discussing our surrender, then boarding our ship. 47 minutes from the moment we showed you that box to the moment you stepped onto our bridge. Dr. Park stood up, and Thelgzar noticed she was wearing a breathing mask now. When had she put that on? Several other crew members were wearing them too. When you first arrived, I scanned your ships, the doctor explained. I learned about your atmospheric requirements, your biology, the way your bodies process different compounds. Humans have been doing biological warfare for thousands of years, General. We're very good at it. Thelgzar tried to reach for his weapon, but his hands would not cooperate. The room was spinning. You poisoned us? No, Jiwoo said. Poison would be fatal. This is something much more precise. Dr. Park created a compound that affects the fluid in your inner hearing organs. For humans, that compound does nothing. We can breathe it all day without problems. But for Vreck's biology, it causes extreme vertigo, confusion, and temporary loss of motor control. You're not dying, General. You're just very, very dizzy. Velthar fell to one knee, his weapon clattering to the floor. Around him, the other Vreck soldiers were collapsing or leaning against walls for support. Thelgzar felt his own legs giving out. This was impossible. Humans were primitives. They had one small ship. They could not. The music box was a distraction, Minho continued, his voice educational like a teacher explaining a lesson. We needed you to focus on something harmless while we modified our environmental systems to release the compound. We needed you to think we were scared and stupid. We needed you to board our ship confident and careless. But why? Thelgzar asked, struggling to focus his four eyes on the captain. Why not just kill us? Jiwoo walked over and carefully helped the general sit down against a console. The gesture was gentle, almost kind, which made Thelgzar feel even more confused. Because killing you would have been easy, Jiwoo said, and easy is not always right. You came here expecting primitives who would either surrender or die fighting. We needed to show you something else, something you didn't expect. Lieutenant Choi Doyen spoke up now. Every species develops weapons, General. But humans learned something after thousands of years of killing each other. We learned that the best weapons are the ones you never have to use at full power. We learned that winning the fight is not the same as winning the peace. Thelzar's mind was struggling to understand. Nothing about this made sense according to everything he knew about warfare and conquest. Weak species died. Strong species dominated. This was the law of the galaxy. But these humans had turned that law sideways. Your soldiers on your ships are experiencing the same symptoms, Dr. Park said. We released the compound into your ventilation systems when you opened the airlocks. They're not in danger, but they're not going to be fighting anyone for a few hours. Your fleet is effectively disabled. This is... Thelgzar tried to find words. This is treachery. This is survival, Jiwoo corrected gently. You gave us 1 hour to surrender or die. We used that hour to make sure neither option was necessary. You thought the music box was our weapon because you were looking for something obvious, something explosive or powerful. You didn't consider that our real weapons are knowledge, adaptation, and the wisdom to use force precisely, rather than absolutely. Velthar managed to speak through his confusion. Why tell us all this? Why not just take advantage of our weakness? Jiwoo knelt down so he was at eye level with the commander. Because this is not about advantage. This is about first contact. You're the first alien species humanity has ever met. The first. Do you understand how important this moment is? We don't want to start our relationship with the galaxy by killing everyone we meet. We want to start it by showing we can defend ourselves without becoming monsters. The captain stood and walked to the pedestal. He picked up the music box carefully, reverently. He wound the small key on its side and set it back down. Soft music began to play. A simple melody, old and sweet, filled the bridge. My grandmother carried this through the worst war in human history, Jiwoo said quietly. She watched cities burn. She saw weapons that could destroy whole continents. She survived horrors that would break most people. And when it was over, when humanity finally chose peace, she kept this music box to remind herself what they had been fighting to preserve. Not territory, not power, but the simple, beautiful things that make life worth living. Thelgzar gazed at the music box with new understanding. It was not a weapon at all. It was a symbol. A reminder of what the humans valued more than victory. So what happens now? The general asked. Now, Jiwoo said with a slight smile, we talk, like civilized beings, and you tell us about the Vrex Empire, and we tell you about humanity. And maybe, if we're very lucky and very wise, we figure out how to not be enemies. The music played on as Thelzar sat on the floor of a human bridge, defeated not by superior weapons but by a completely different way of thinking about warfare itself. 3 hours later, General Thelzar sat in the New Horizons meeting room with his head clearer but his understanding of the universe fundamentally shaken. Commander Velthar sat beside him, both of them drinking something the humans called tea. It was warm and strange but somehow comforting. Captain Jiwoo sat across the table with Dr. Park and Engineer Minho. Between them, a communication screen showed 2 more humans joining from Earth. Ambassador Lee Hyejin, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing, and Admiral Yoon Taehyuk, an older man with scars on his hands and a military bearing that Thelzar recognized immediately as someone who had actually fought in wars. General, Ambassador Lee began, her voice diplomatic but firm. We need to discuss what happens next. You attacked our ship without provocation. By any law, we would be justified in destroying your fleet. But you won't, Thelzar said. It was not a question. He was beginning to understand these humans. No, Jiwoo confirmed. We won't, because that would make us no different from you. And we've spent the last 200 years trying to be different from what we were. Velthar leaned forward with interest. What were you? Admiral Yoon spoke for the first time. We were killers, Commander. The best killers this galaxy has probably ever seen. Not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because we were creative about it. We turned warfare into an art form. We built weapons that could end all life on our planet 100 times over. We came very, very close to making ourselves extinct. The Admiral pulled up a hologram that floated above the table. Images began to appear. Cities in ruins, mushroom clouds rising into dark skies, faces of starving people, bodies in streets. Thelzar had seen conquered worlds before, but something about these images felt different. More personal, more painful. This was Earth, Yoon continued. About 250 years ago. We call it the last war. We fought with nuclear weapons, biological agents, chemical attacks. We poisoned our own air and water. We killed billions of our own people. And for what? Territory, resources, pride. By the end, no one could even remember why we started fighting. How did you survive? Velthar asked quietly. Barely, Ambassador Lee said. And only because enough people decided that survival was more important than victory. We made peace not because we wanted to, but because the alternative was death for everyone. And in that peace we learned something crucial. What? Thelzar asked despite himself. Jiwoo answered. We learned that having the power to destroy is not the same as having the wisdom to rule. We learned that real strength is not about who has the biggest weapons. It's about who knows when not to use them. Dr. Park added to the hologram, showing different images now. Cities rebuilding, green plants growing in wastelands, people of different cultures working together. After the last war, we could have split into separate nations again. We could have gone back to the old ways. Instead, we built something new. The United Earth Government. We agreed that humanity would never fight itself again. We turned all our weapons into tools. We pointed our missiles at asteroids instead of cities. We used our biological research to cure diseases instead of creating them. We took everything we learned about killing and transformed it into knowledge about living. That music box Captain Jiwoo showed you, Engineer Minho said. It belonged to his grandmother. She lived through the last war as a child. She was in Seoul when the bombs fell. She watched her city burn. She lost her parents, her brothers, everyone. But she survived. And she kept that music box because it reminded her that even in the worst darkness, beauty still exists. Hope still exists. Thelgzar felt something uncomfortable in his chest. Was this what humans called emotion? The Vrex had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never talked about hope or beauty. They talked about strength and dominance and order. So when I boarded your ship, Thelzar said slowly. And you showed me that music box? I was showing you our history, Jiwoo finished. I was showing you what we learned. What we paid for with billions of lives. The music box itself is worthless as a weapon, but what it represents? That's the most powerful thing humanity has. That's our choice to remember the cost of war and choose a different path. Admiral Yoon pulled up new images. These showed weapons. Terrifying weapons, missiles that could crack planets, biological agents that could wipe out entire species, energy weapons that made Vrex technology look primitive. We still have the knowledge, Yoon said grimly. We still know how to build weapons of mass destruction. We could create a plague that would kill every Vrex in your empire within days. We could build bombs that would turn your homeworld into dust. We have the designs. We have the science. We choose not to build them. Why? Velthar asked. If you have such power, why not use it? Why not conquer the galaxy yourselves? Because we did that, Ambassador Lee said quietly. We conquered Earth. Every nation that rose tried to dominate all the others. And every one of them eventually fell. We learned that conquest is not sustainable. You can take territory, but you can't force people to want to be conquered. You can win battles, but you create enemies that will fight you for generations. The Vrex Empire spans 847 systems, General. How many of those systems love you? How many are loyal by choice rather than fear? Thelzar said nothing. The answer was obvious and shameful. Jiwoo stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We didn't disable your fleet to prove we were stronger, General. We did it to show you there was another option. You came here ready to conquer or destroy us. We could have killed you. We chose to talk instead. That's not weakness. That's wisdom purchased with the blood of billions of our ancestors who learned the hard way. The Vrex Empire believes in strength, Thelgzar said, but his voice lacked conviction now. So do we. Jiwoo turned back to face him. But we define strength differently. You think strength is the power to defeat your enemies. We think strength is the power to make allies out of potential enemies. You think strength is conquest. We think strength is building something that people want to join rather than being forced to accept. Dr. Park brought up another hologram. This is a proposal, General. We're offering to share some of our technology with the Vrex Empire, not weapons. Never weapons, but medical advances, agricultural techniques, energy production, things that will improve life for your people and all the species you've conquered. Why would you do that? Velthar looked genuinely confused. We attacked you. Because this is first contact, Ambassador Lee said. This is the moment that defines how humanity interacts with the rest of the galaxy. We could start with fear and violence, or we could start with generosity and wisdom. We're choosing the second option. We're betting that given the choice between a humanity that hoards knowledge and a humanity that shares it, the galaxy will eventually see us as partners rather than threats. Thelgzar gazed at the music box, which Jiwoo had placed in the center of the meeting table. Such a simple object, wood and metal, and a mechanism that played a melody. His people would have seen it as worthless, but these humans saw it as priceless. Not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. You could have destroyed us, the general said quietly. Yes, Jiwoo agreed, but then we would be proving you right about us, that we're primitives who only understand violence. We wanted to prove something else, that we understand violence so well that we know when not to use it, that we're wise enough to turn enemies into friends, that we learned from our mistakes. Admiral Yoon leaned forward. The question now, General, is what will you do with this information? You can report back to your empire that humanity is weak and easily conquered. You can ignore what you've learned here, or you can do something harder. You can think about whether the Vrex way of doing things is the only way, whether conquest is truly the same as strength, whether there might be a different path for your people. The room fell silent except for the soft sound of the music box playing its ancient melody. Thelgzar realized this was the real test. Not the battle, not the clever trap the humans had set. This was the test. Would he have the strength to question everything he had believed his entire life? I need to think, Thelgzar said finally. That's all we ask, Jiwoo replied with a small smile. Think, question, consider possibilities. That's how wisdom begins. 2 months passed since the incident at Kepler 442. News traveled fast through the Vrex Empire, though not always accurately. Some reports said General Thelgzar had been defeated by overwhelming human forces. Others said he had been captured through treachery. A few whispered the truth, which was somehow more disturbing than any lie. The humans had won without firing a single shot. On the Vrex homeworld of Vrexar Prime, the High Council gathered in their ancient chamber. 7 counselors sat in a circle, their metallic skin gleaming under cold lights. Counselor Mervac stood at the center, his 4 eyes scanning reports on floating displays. "This is unacceptable," Counselor Dorvin spat, a general of the Empire disabled by primitives using biological tricks. "General Thelxar should be executed for incompetence. Should he?" Mervax asked quietly. "He was older than most counselors with scars from battles fought decades ago. Or should we be asking why none of our intelligence predicted this capability? Why we assumed humans were primitive just because they have one small ship?" "They are primitive," another counselor insisted. "They don't even control their own star system completely. They have no empire, no conquered worlds." "Maybe that's not weakness," Mervac suggested. "Maybe that's choice." The chamber fell silent. Choice was not a word the Vrex used often about warfare. Meanwhile on Earth, the human response was very different. Kim Janae sat in a secure conference room in Geneva, reviewing intelligence reports from throughout the Vrex Empire. She was humanity's chief xenopsychology expert, someone who specialized in understanding how alien minds worked. What she was reading made her both excited and concerned. "They're fracturing," she said to Admiral Yoon, who stood looking at a star map. "The Vrex Empire is not as stable as they want everyone to believe. At least 40 conquered species are planning some form of rebellion. The Empire spends more resources controlling what they've taken than exploring new territory." "That matches what General Thelxar told us," Yoon replied. "The Empire is overstretched. They maintain control through fear, but fear only works until someone stops being afraid." Lieutenant Shin Yoonji, the youngest intelligence officer in the room, pulled up more data. "We're receiving covert messages from 7 different species within Vrex territory. They all want to know the same thing. How did we defeat the Vrex without using superior weapons? They want to learn. Some are asking if we'll help them gain independence." Ambassador Lee Heejin entered the room carrying an old-fashioned paper notebook. Despite all the advanced technology available, she preferred writing important thoughts by hand. "This is getting complicated very quickly. We didn't want to destabilize the entire Vrex Empire. We just wanted to show them we couldn't be easily conquered. But that's the problem with being an example," Kim Janai said. "Other people notice. If humanity can stand up to the Vrex using intelligence instead of force, why can't they? We've accidentally started a revolution just by refusing to play by the Empire's rules." Back on Vrexar Prime, General Thelxar stood before the High Council. He had been recalled from his fleet to face judgment. Commander Velthar stood beside him as a witness. Both expected to be punished, possibly executed. That was how the Empire dealt with failure. "General Thelxar," Counselor Dorvin said coldly, "you allowed your fleet to be disabled by a single human vessel. You were captured and humiliated. Do you have any defense for this incompetence?" Thelxar stood straight, his 4 eyes focused. "I have no defense, Counselor. I failed. But I learned something that the Empire needs to hear." "We do not need lessons from failures," Dorvin snapped. "With respect, Counselor, yes you do." Velthar spoke up despite the risk. "I was there. I witnessed everything. If you execute us without hearing what we learned, you will make the same mistakes with the humans. And the next general you send will fail too." Mervax held up a hand for silence. "Speak then, General. What did you learn?" Thelxar took a breath. "I learned that we have been defining strength wrong. The humans defeated us not because they had better weapons. They defeated us because they understand warfare at a level we have never considered. They know not just how to fight, but why to fight and when to stop fighting. They have knowledge we need." "Knowledge?" Dorvin laughed. "From primitives?" "They destroyed themselves once," Thelxar said quietly. "Their whole world almost died because they were too good at killing each other. They survived and learned from it. They understand something we don't. They understand that conquest creates enemies, but respect creates allies. They beat us with that knowledge." Counselor Mervax leaned forward with interest. "Continue." "The humans offered to share their technology with us," Velthar added. "Not weapons. Medical science, agriculture, energy production. They said they wanted to help the Empire improve life for all species under our control. They did this after we attacked them. After we tried to conquer them. They responded to violence with generosity." "That sounds like weakness," another counselor said. "I thought so too," Thelxar admitted. "But then I realized something. If we accept their help and life improves for the species we control, those species become more loyal. They stop planning rebellions. They stop seeing us as oppressors and start seeing us as leaders. The humans are offering us a way to actually stabilize the Empire without spending enormous resources on military control. Mervax nodded slowly. A fascinating strategy. Make the conquered want to stay conquered by making their lives better. Except the humans don't call it conquest, Thelgzar said. They call it cooperation. They believe species should choose to work together rather than being forced. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some counselors called it naive nonsense. Others saw dangerous potential. And a few, like Mervax, recognized it as something revolutionary. While the Vrex debated, humanity was taking action. Captain Jiwoo's New Horizon had been joined by 3 other ships. Not warships, science vessels, medical ships, and 1 carrying agricultural specialists. They moved through neutral space near Vrex territory, openly broadcasting their presence and purpose. "This is risky," Dr. Park said to Jiwoo on the bridge. "We're making ourselves very visible to an empire that already attacked us once." "That's the point," Jiwoo replied. "We're showing we're not afraid. We're showing we meant what we said about cooperation. Actions speak louder than words, especially to species who are used to violence." Engineer Minho was monitoring communications. "Captain, we're getting messages. Lots of them. From inside Vrex space. Some are from conquered species asking for help. Some are from Vrex citizens who want to learn more about us. Some are warnings that hardliners in the Empire want to attack us again." "Forward everything to Ambassador Lee," Jiwoo ordered. "And prepare care packages. Medical supplies, crop seeds, technical specifications for clean water systems.
Anything that helps people."
If species in the Empire want our help, we'll give it. Freely, no strings attached." Lieutenant Choi Doyen looked worried. "Sir, some counselors on Earth are concerned. They say we're interfering in Vrex internal politics, that we might start a war." "We're not interfering," Jiwoo said. "We're offering. There's a difference. We're not forcing anyone to take our help. We're just making it available. If that destabilizes an empire built on fear and force, that's not our fault. That's the Empire's fault for being built on such a weak foundation." Back on Vrexer Prime, the debate finally ended. General Thelzar was not executed. Instead, in a decision that shocked everyone, Councillor Mervax proposed something unprecedented. "We will send a delegation to meet with the humans," Mervax announced. "Not to conquer, not to demand, to talk, to learn. General Thelgzar, you will lead this delegation. Commander Velthar will accompany you. You will learn everything you can about human philosophy, their technology, their methods, and you will report back to this council." "This is madness," Dorvin protested. "We are the Vrex Empire. We do not learn from others. Others learn from us, and how has that worked?" Mervax asked coldly. "We control 847 systems, but we're constantly fighting rebellions. We spend more on military force than on improving the worlds we govern. Perhaps it is time to try something different. If it fails, we lose nothing but time. If it succeeds, we gain stability we have never achieved through force alone." The vote was close, but it passed. General Thelgzar would become not a warrior, but a student. He would learn from the species he had tried to conquer. When the news reached Earth, Ambassador Lee smiled. "It's working. They're actually considering changing. Some of them," Kim Janai cautioned. "Others will fight this with everything they have. Change is hard, especially for an empire built on conquest." "Then we better be ready," Admiral Yoon said. "Ready to defend ourselves if the hardliners attack, but also ready to welcome the ones who want to learn. This is the real test. Not whether we can defeat the Vrex, but whether we can help them transform into something better." 6 months had passed since first contact. The galaxy was talking, and the words being spoken would change everything. The Galactic Council Chamber was a structure built millions of years ago by species now extinct. It orbited a dying star in neutral space, accessible to all but owned by none. For 300 years, the chamber had been empty. No species considered themselves worthy of calling a meeting. No species trusted the others enough to gather in one place. Today, the chamber was full for the first time in 3 centuries. President Kang Sora of the United Earth Government stood at the entrance, trying not to show her nervousness. She was 53 years old, a former professor of philosophy who had never imagined she would be president when humanity made first contact with alien life. Behind her stood Captain Han Jiwoo, now promoted to admiral for his role in the first encounter. Dr. Park Suman was there as Earth's chief science advisor. Engineer Kang Minho carried a small case containing the music box that had started everything. Are you ready? Ambassador Lee Hijin asked quietly. No, Sora admitted, but I don't think anyone could be ready for this. They walked into the chamber. The space was enormous, with platforms arranged in ascending circles around a central floor. On those platforms sat representatives of 43 different species. Some were humanoid. Some were barely recognizable as living things. All of them watched the humans with varying degrees of curiosity, suspicion, and respect. General Thelgzar stood on the Vrex platform beside Counselor Mervax. The general had changed over the past 6 months. He had spent that time traveling to human colonies, learning their history, studying their methods. He had visited hospitals where human doctors saved alien lives. He had seen farms where human agricultural science helped conquered species feed themselves. He had attended schools where human teachers trained Vrex children, and Vrex teachers trained human children. He had learned, and learning had transformed him. At the highest platform sat the ancient Kaval. No one knew exactly how old they were. Some said millions of years. They looked like crystalline beings, glowing with soft internal light. They had been the ones to call this meeting. They had been watching humanity since humans first split atoms and reached for space. President Sora walked to the center of the chamber. Her voice was amplified by technology so advanced it seemed like magic. I am Kang Sora, speaking for humanity. We are new to the galaxy. We are young. We have made many mistakes and we will surely make more. But we come here today with open hands and open minds. We come to learn and to share. We come not as conquerors but as potential friends to anyone willing to give us that chance. Pretty words. A voice called from one platform, a species called the Rectal, known for their military power. But we have heard the reports. You defeated the Vrex using biological warfare. You are dangerous. Yeah, Sora said simply. We are dangerous. Every species that has survived long enough to reach space is dangerous. The question is not whether we're capable of violence. The question is whether we choose violence as our first answer or our last resort. Counselor Mervax stood. The Vrex Empire has existed for 12,000 years. In that time, we have conquered hundreds of worlds through force. We believed strength meant domination. Then we encountered humanity. They showed us something we never considered. That real strength might mean choosing not to dominate. That wisdom might be more powerful than weapons. The Vrex have changed their ways? Another species asked skeptically. You expect us to believe an empire built on conquest suddenly became peaceful? Not peaceful, Thelzar spoke up, but wiser. The humans shared their agricultural technology with us. We implemented it on 3 conquered worlds as a test. Food production increased by 40%. Rebellious populations became cooperative. They did not love us yet, but they stopped hating us enough to risk their lives fighting. That happened in 3 months. 3 months of cooperation achieved what 300 years of military occupation could not. The chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had been conquered by the Vrex before escaping spoke about their experiences. Others asked questions about human technology and philosophy. Some remained suspicious, certain this was some elaborate trick. The ancient Kaval raised one crystalline appendage. Silence fell immediately. When they spoke, their voice was like music and mountains combined. We have watched humanity for centuries, the Kaval said. We watched them split the atom and build weapons that could destroy their world. We watched them come within hours of nuclear annihilation multiple times. We expected them to die like so many young species do, destroyed by their own cleverness before gaining wisdom. Sora felt her mouth go dry. They had been watched. Humanity's darkest moments had been observed by ancient beings who could have helped but chose not to. But humanity surprised us. The Kaval continued. They survived. More than that, they learned. They turned their weapons into tools. They chose cooperation over domination. When we arranged for the Vrex to encounter them first, we expected either humanity to be conquered or to reveal themselves as another violent species that would threaten galactic peace. You arranged it? Thelgzar looked shocked. The meeting was a test? Everything is a test, General, the Kaval replied. The question was whether humanity would respond with overwhelming violence, with surrender, or with something else. They chose something else. They defended themselves precisely, proportionally, and then they offered peace. This is rare. This is precious. This is why we have called this council after 300 years of silence. The ancient Kaval floated down from their high platform to the center floor where Sora stood. They moved through the air like smoke, beautiful and impossible. Tell me, President Kang Sora, if General Thelgzar's fleet had been more powerful, if your plan had failed, what would you have done? Sora considered lying, considered giving a diplomatic answer. But these beings had watched humanity for centuries. They would know. We had 17 backup plans, she admitted, each one more desperate than the last. The final plan would have destroyed my ship Thelzar's fleet, and probably our chance at peaceful first contact. But we would have survived as a species. Humanity is good at surviving. We insist on it, and we get creative about how. The Keval made a sound like crystal bells laughing. Yes, this is what we saw. Humanity's greatest strength is not your technology or your biology. It is your absolute refusal to give up combined with your capacity to learn from mistakes. You have failed more catastrophically than most species ever do. Yet you continue to exist and improve. This resilience, this adaptability, this is what the galaxy needs, Captain Jiwoo spoke up. What does the galaxy need it for? The galaxy is old, Captain, the Keval replied. Old and tired. Most species reach a certain level of advancement and then stagnate. They maintain their territory but lose the drive to explore, to question, to grow. They become comfortable. The Vrex conquered because they mistook expansion for growth. But conquest is not growth. It is just moving pieces on a board. Real growth is internal, philosophical, spiritual. This is what humanity still has. You are young enough to still question everything, old enough to have wisdom from your mistakes. This combination is rare. Engineer Minho stepped forward with the case. Your Excellency, there is something we want to share. Something that represents our journey. He opened the case and took out the music box. It looked even smaller and more fragile in this enormous chamber surrounded by advanced alien species. Minho placed it on a pedestal that rose from the floor and wound the key. The simple melody filled the chamber. In the vastness of space, surrounded by beings of immense power and ancient knowledge, a child's music box played a tune written hundreds of years ago by a human who had never imagined the stars. This belonged to Admiral Jiwoo's grandmother, Minho explained. She carried it through the last war, through fire and death and the near extinction of our species. She kept it because it reminded her that even in darkness beauty exists, that even in war we must remember what we're fighting to preserve. It's not powerful. It's not advanced. But it is human. It is our reminder. General Thelzar gazed at the music box. He had seen it before, but now he understood it completely. On that day 6 months ago when he had boarded the New Horizon expecting easy conquest, Jiwoo had shown him this and said words that changed everything. You're looking at it wrong, General. That's not the weapon. We are. But those words had meant something different than Thelzar first understood. Humanity was not threatening to be a weapon of destruction. They were explaining that they themselves, their culture, their philosophy, their refusal to be conquered or to become conquerors, that was the real power. Not the power to destroy, but the power to transform. The music box was a distraction, Thelgzar said, speaking to the assembled council. It made me focus on finding their weapon while missing their real strength. They beat me not with superior force, but with superior understanding. Of biology, of psychology, of warfare itself. But most importantly, they beat me with the wisdom to win without killing. This is what I learned from humanity. This is what the Vrex Empire is trying to learn now. Councillor Mervac stood. The Vrex Empire formally requests a cultural exchange with humanity. We wish to learn their methods of governance,